Let's talk about Matt Gaetz, right? The Republican in Congress. Today, he said he is filing a bill. It's called the National Prayer in School Act. And he said he's doing this because he wants to allow students and teachers to pray in school without consequences. And I know, like, all of you listening to this are like, students and teachers can already pray in school without consequences. Quite literally, no one was stopping them. Students can pray whenever they want, as long as they're like not being disruptive about it. Teachers can pray whenever they want, as long as they're not forcing students to do it with them or something. Like, go into the teacher's lounge and pray. No one's stopping you. Do it on your car ride on the way to work. No one's stopping you. So what is it that this bill would do? And I thought, okay, well, let me read his bill and he'll spell out, Matt Gaetz will spell out what it is this bill does. And I tried to read it, and I swear I had to, it's short. I'm going to show it to you here. I wanted to read it, and then it took so long to make it make sense because it was just word salad. Okay, here's the bill. Check this out. Where did I go? There we go. This is the draft bill. It's not officially filed, doesn't have a number yet. But I'll scroll down just to show you the length of this. Most of this is tedious stuff. It doesn't really matter. Like, this act may be cited as the blankety blank act of 2020. Yeah, whatever. Here's the important stuff. Can you see how long this bill is? It starts at line 7 right over here, and it goes to line 8 on the second page. It's not very long. I will show you what it says right over here. Here's what all that says. And I'm going to give you a second to read this, because what the hell is he saying here? Like, if you parse this sentence and try to diagram it, I'm pretty sure you would get like a roller coaster. I'm not even going to try to read it to you. I just want you to stare at the giant block of text that doesn't say much at all. And then I'll try to explain to you what I think he's doing, because the key word here is right there. That's the important stuff. The shall be liable. What he's basically saying, and I wrote it down here, is this bill says no one's allowed to stop someone else from praying in school. And if you try, that person can be sued for it. That's what Gaetz's bill does. So if a teacher is praying in the classroom and being coercive about it, normally an administrator would step in and say, you can't do that. That's illegal. We're going to file paperwork. We're going to reprimand you, whatever it is they do. Now the principal could be sued. Or if, the Bremerton case in front of the Supreme Court last year, where a high school football coach, Joe Kennedy, had to pray at midfield after games, because that's what Jesus said everyone needed to do after football games. And then he held these big showboaty prayers at the 50-yard line after games. And the Supreme Court is like, even though everyone says it's coercive and players on the team are like, yeah, he kind of pressured me to join him. And the parents are like, yeah, you pressured my kid to join him. The Supreme Court said, it's fine. If a coach now said we're going to have a big team prayer before the game, again, Matt Gaetz is saying no one could stop that person from doing it. It's basically a whole bill about forced Christianity, and that's why it's a big, giant mistake. What Gaetz wants to do is basically destroy the Establishment Clause. He's not interested in religious freedom, because even though he says this is about religious freedom, like, if a Muslim teacher or coach tried to do any of this stuff, or a Satanist tried to do any of this, or if an atheist coach said, yeah, no one's allowed to pray or something, none of these people would be allowed to get away with it. Even if Gaetz got his way, only Christians would be allowed to do any of this stuff. Like, this is all just red meat for Christian nationalists who think they only have an obligation to shove their faith in everyone else's faith. And it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what your job is, they should always be allowed to get away with it. And this is all, I think, part of a bigger picture of Republicans just attacking everything they can about public education. They want to ban books. They want to limit what can be taught in the classroom. if you're a Dawkins fan, they want to treat LGBTQ people, teachers, students as like enemies of the state. And here's Gaetz saying, and also I want this to become church. That's what I love, because if you know anything about Matt Gaetz, is that he's the holiest man in Congress. Just for the record, the Biden administration earlier this year, in response to the Bremerton ruling, they actually publicly released guidance for what public schools can do about prayer, just trying to parse, like, here's what the Supreme Court said, and we followed the law, and here's what you can do. Their guidance, the Biden administration's guidance, said teachers, administrators, other employees may not encourage or discourage private prayer or other religious activity. It said school employees are allowed to engage in private prayer during the workday, but they cannot, and I'm quoting here, compel, coerce, persuade, or encourage students to join in the prayer or other activity. And a school, they said, can take reasonable measures to make sure there's no coercion involved. And all of that, totally fine. All of that made sense. That is perfectly in line with how the ACLU and church state separation attorneys, like how all of them would interpret the law right now. And yet for people like Gaetz, that's still not good enough, because just playing by the same rules as everyone else, Christian nationalists hate that. They always want special privilege. And that's what Gaetz is going for with this bill. I mean, if there's any good news, is that it's not going to pass. I mean, the Senate's not going to pass it. Joe Biden's not going to sign it. I don't think there's overwhelming support for this to override any sort of veto. And Gaetz knows that, but that's not the point. This is all political theater for him. This is all about being able to send a message to the Republican base that if you put guys like me in charge, we'll make sure your religion gets top priority, and also just ignore anything Matt Gaetz is under investigation for, right? Like, none of these people have read the Constitution. The same people who are like, you know, I hate trans people because I care about women's sports, even though they know nothing about women's sports and never care about it, and then celebrate when women lose in sports. Like, all of these guys, like Gaetz, they're all saying, I care about the Constitution. The First Amendment doesn't really matter. They're all the same. They all play this stupid game.